Give us the courage to wail in anger so that we can make space in our lungs for a new song, a lullaby for all that is being born in this great and living darkness, the shadows of surprise and surrender, all that readies in us, and in Dr. King's still worthy dream of beloved community, to change, to be changed, to know it all as God. God is change. We give thanks for this. We call out with thanks for this. We sing out praise and gladness for this, that we can wake up to this world again, that we can wake up to its beauty, its possibility, that we can keep on getting into the good trouble, necessary trouble, like the prophet John Lewis said. We praise and give thanks that we have the strength, and most of all, that we have the company to keep moving forward, eyes open into the dawning day. Amen, and blessed be. Let us have a moment of silence together. second reading this morning is from Alex Capitan and Reverend Michael Slack. Beloved community is. Beloved community is when we say we, and we mean everyone. Beloved community is not homogeneous. It can't be. When commonality is presumed, when we make assumptions about who's present and whether people are like us or not, we're not practicing beloved community, because beloved community doesn't make those assumptions. It doesn't presume commonality or a sense of being homogeneous. Another thing that beloved community is not like-minded, because we're not called to be like-minded in spiritual community. We're called to be like-hearted. And finally, beloved community is not devoid of conflict. And this one is also really hard. Beloved community is not easy. There is nothing easy about practicing beloved community. When we avoid conflict in order to get along, we're not practicing beloved community, because beloved community exists when we trust each other. We have the relationships, the strong enough relationships to actually disagree with each other, to be in conflict, even to risk hurting each other. And we can stay in relationship through those disagreements and conflict and potential hurt. That is practicing beloved community. Now, good people, this is the time in our service where we would ask you for your kind donations toward the good works of this church. You can send it old school to 71 8th Street, New Bedford, Massachusetts, 02740. Go to our website, uunewbedford.org, and scroll down to find the donate button. We just got an updated website, so I'm not sure if it's still at the bottom, but I think it is. And give generously if you would, and we thank you for keeping up all your pledges. We sure appreciate it. Now, this month's Soul Matters theme. Beloved community. What does it mean to be a people of beloved community? And this is a perfect topic for Black History Month. We refer to this term fairly often in the UU zone, but what does it really mean? And how do we go about making it real? Martin Luther King introduced us to this vision of beloved community as one based on justice, equality, and love for each other. The King Center describes it as a global vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. I titled this sermon, Waking Up Again, after I read the excerpt from Reverend Dr. King from the UUA General Assembly's Ware Lecture in 1966, entitled Remain Awake. He said, "The idea whose time has come today is the idea of freedom and human dignity. And so all over the world, we see something of a freedom explosion. And this reveals to us that we are in the midst of revolutionary times. An older order is passing away and a new order is coming into being. The role of the church is to broaden horizons, to challenge the status quo, to question and break mores. The church has a major role to play in this period of social change. It must remain awake through this revolution. Although there were lots of churches who were fine with the idea of freedom and equality for all and fought for civil rights and marched beside Dr. King, it kind of seemed like not long after Dr. King died and after President Kennedy and his brother were shot, after the littlest bit of dignity was afforded our black and brown brothers and sisters with integrated schools and businesses, our churches fairly quickly fell back to sleep. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Challenging the status quo, after all, and breaking mores often meant trouble. And well, it's just easier to think, well, there's laws that protect them now, right? So we'll just close our eyes to how ingrained this racism remains in our country. Hit the snooze button. Go back to praying for peace and hoping it will all turn out okay in the end. That seems to be one of the plans that we humans have for how things might turn out. We'll just see how they turn out. Well, church, it did not end up okay in the end. White nationalism in this country is alive and well. We see it all too frequently. The fear and injustice that our black and brown brothers and sisters experience endures. It's why we have to keep repeating that Black Lives Matter. This past Thursday, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez held a special meeting for her colleagues to be able to talk about their experience about what happened to them on January 6th. And it was very moving. Representative Rashida Tlaib had me crying with her, talking about how scary it was to be a Muslim that day, and how her staff, who are diverse, she has trans people and women in hijab, how they might have been treated if they were found. And I wanted to reach out and hold her like her friend Alexandria was drawn to do. Representative Cori Bush made a powerful statement against racism with her words, and I clasped my hands with an amen afterward. But I think one of the things that moved me and maybe a lot of other people as white people most came from Representative Dean Phillips from Minnesota. And he talked about how surreal and terrifying it was hiding on one side of the gallery with his colleagues. They took off their congressional pins so that they might not be recognized. They were truly in fear for their lives as they heard screams and shouts outside the chamber, furniture being dragged in front of the doors, and the sound of the gunshot that killed one of the insurgents. Representative Phillips thought to himself that if the chamber was breached, it might be better for them to go over to the other side with the Republicans, who are also taking cover. It would just be safer if they could blend in with them. But then he said, I realized blending in was not an option available to my colleagues of color. And he apologized to his colleagues because he said he finally, really, in that moment, understood what privilege meant. It was powerful in its rawness and authenticity. And I hope it made people think about the ability to blend in and how none of us are safe unless all of us feel safe. And I don't want to take away from the powerful words of the women especially of women of color that spoke that day, and give excess credit to this white guy. But this is how it starts. This is how, as Dr. King says, hearts are changed and minds are changed. This is how it begins. So let's get back to waking up in our churches as we try and wake up across America and across the world to the true nature of racism and the systemic injustices people of color still face. The UUA has yet to formally adopt the 8th principle, which affirms and promotes journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppression in ourselves and in our institutions. But I'm hoping that maybe as a congregation, we can adopt it ourselves, as many other congregations have done across the country, to make sure we keep our eye on the goal of defeating racism in this country and to be as radically inclusive as we can be. None of us can afford to go back to sleep on this issue. Not in our communities, and certainly not in our churches, who are willing and able to press it forward and proclaim that we stand on the side of love. In our first reading today, Martin Luther King said, "Our ultimate end must be reconciliation. The end must be redemption. The end must be the creation of beloved community." We have before us the glorious opportunity to inject a new dimension of love into the veins of our civilization. A new dimension of love. When I heard Representative Phillips telling his story the other night, and all the others who told their stories and shared their fear, I started to think maybe that's a new dimension of love. People realizing just how privileged they are and wanting to ensure that others get the same treatment. When I saw so many people in government and in the public speak out to defend Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez against those who tried to shame her and make her feel weak for being a trauma survivor, and who validated her experience and shared their own, I thought to myself, well, here is a new dimension of love. People willing to share the raw stories of their deepest fears to help others. These are the small things that are the big things that begin to equalize us. So how do we wake up to beloved community for ourselves? How do we manifest this in our lives? Think of it like this, and maybe it's as idealistic as Dr. King, but I've always embraced the idea, growing up Catholic, as that we are all brothers and sisters, all part of a very large family, and that loving each other was paramount to the teachings of all religions. So yes, our family is going to contain people you don't agree with and who don't agree with you. There will be loud uncles who say terrible things and burp loudly after dinner. There will be aunties who always have something critical to say, and every conversation will begin with, "You know what you need to do is." There will be sisters who think you're crazy for your beliefs and never stop reminding you that hell awaits you in the afterlife for loving everyone. And brothers who wouldn't give you a glass of water if you were on fire because they just don't care. The thing about family, though, is that after all the fights and the feuds, after all the division and the drama, you eventually have to sit down around a table, share a meal, talk about the things that you do have in common, because you do have lots of things in common. And when we part ways, give each other a hug, say, "I love you," and go back to doing our own thing. Now, not all families can do that for certain, but most can, at least occasionally. We're humans. I do believe that love wins. When people sit down and get to know each other and understand each other, we can reach the top of this enormous mountain we still have to climb in order to finally love each other enough to treat each other the same, to finally realize that privilege should belong to everyone. Justice and freedom should belong to everyone. Everyone deserves respect, and everyone deserves love. Dr. King's dream of beloved community may still seem far away, church, and God knows we have so much work to do to keep ourselves woke through this revolution. But the thing about revolutions is that they are usually loud enough to keep us awake. They are loud enough to wake up those who are still stubbornly sleeping and romantically dreaming of how things used to be. And we can do this peacefully with our voices, our actions, and our love, our example of love. I will repeat the words of John Lewis as a guidepost. When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have to speak up. You have to say something. You have to do something. Democracy is not a state, it is an act. And each generation must do its part to help build what we call the beloved community, a nation and world society at peace with itself. Let us open our eyes, church, and renew that hope of freedom and justice for all, and stick with it. Amen. And blessed be. Our closing words as I extinguish our chalice this morning are from the great Nelson Mandela. I have walked that long road to freedom. I have tried not to falter. I have made missteps along the way. But I can rest for only a moment, for with freedom come responsibilities. My walk is not yet ended. Neither should yours be. Hold fast, my friends. We'll see you next week. We're going to discuss COVID-19 with someone who's had it. And I hope you have a great week. I hope you're not snowed in too much. Although, you know what? I hope we all do get snowed in today. We could really use it. I could use the snow day. I'm sure you could too. Be well. We love you.